Marmion, A Tale of Blood and Field by Sir Walter Scott, 1808. Well, great events were on the gale, and each hour brought a varying tale, and the demeanor changed and cold of Douglas fretted Marmion bold, and like the impatient steed of war, he snuffed the battle from afar, and hopes were none that back again herald should come from Toronane, where England's king in leaguer lay. Before divisive battle day, while these things were, the mournful Clare did in the dame's devotion share, for the good Countess ceaseless prayed to heaven and saints her sons to aid, and with short interval did pass from prayer to book, from book to mass, and all in high baronial pride, a life both dull and dignified. Yet as Lord Marmion nothing pressed upon her intervals of rest, dejected Clara could well bear the formal state, the lengthened prayer. Thou dearest to her wounded heart the hours that she might spend apart. I said Tantalon's dizzy steep hung o'er the margin of the deep, many a rude tower and rampart there repelled the insult of the air, which, when the tempest vexed the sky, half breeze, half spray, came whistling by. Above the rest, a turret square did o'er its Gothic entrance bear, of sculpture rude and stony shield. The bloody heart was in the field, and in the chief 3 mullets stood, the cognizance of Douglas blood. The turret held a narrow stair, which mounted gave you access where a parapet's embattled row did seaward round the castle go, sometimes in dizzying steps descending, sometimes in narrow circuit bending, sometimes in platform broad extending, its varying circle did combine. Bulwark and bartizan and line, and bastion, tower, and vantage cone. Above the booming ocean leant the far projecting battlement. The billows burst in ceaseless flow upon the precipice below. Where'er Tantalon faced the land, gateworks and walls were strongly manned. No need upon the sea-girt side, the steepy rock and frantic tide, approach of human step denied. And thus these lines and ramparts rude were left in deepest solitude. And for they were so lonely, Clare would to these battlements repair, and muse upon her sorrows there. Once walking thus at eveningside, it chanced a gliding sail she spied, and think what next he must have felt at buckling of the falchion belt, and judge how Clara changed her hue, while fastening to her lover's side a friend which, though in danger tried, he once had found untrue. Then Douglas struck him with his blade, Saint Michael and Saint Andrew aid. I dub thee knight, arise, Sir Ralph de Wilton's heir, for king, for church, for lady fair. See that thou fight. And Bishop Gawain, as he rose, said, Wilton, grieve not for thy woes. Disgrace and trouble for he who honor best bestows may give thee double. De Wilton sobbed, for sob he must, where'er I meet a Douglas trust, that Douglas is my brother, Nay, nay, old Angus said, not so. To Surrey's camp thou now must go, thy wrongs no longer smother. I have 2 sons in yonder field, and if thou meetest them under shield, upon them bravely do thy worst, and foul fall him that blenches first. Not far advanced was morning day, when Marmion did his troop array, to Surrey's camp to ride. He had safe conduct for his band, beneath the royal seal in hand, and Douglas gave a guide. The ancient earl, with stately grace, would Clare on her palfrey place, and whispered in an undertone, let the hawk stoop, his prey is flown. The train from out the castle drew, but Marmion stopped to bid adieu. Though something I might plain, he said, of cold respect to stranger guest, sent Hitbert by your king's behest, while in Tunstall's towers I stayed, part we in friendship from your land, and noble earl, receive my hand. But Douglas round him drew his cloak, folded his arms, and thus he spoke, my manor's halls and bowers shall still be open at my sovereign's will, to each one whom he list, howe'er unmeet, to be the owner's peer. My castles are my king's alone, from turret to foundation stone. The hand of Douglas is his own, and never shall in friendly grasp the hand of such as Marmion clasp. Burned Marmion's swarthy cheek like fire, and shook his very frame for ire. And this to me he said, and 'twere not for thy hoary beard, such hand as Marmion's had not spared, to cleave the Douglas head. And first I tell thee, haughty peer, he who does England's message hear, although the meanest in her state, may well, proud Angus, be thy mate. And Douglas, more I tell thee here, even in thy pitch of pride, here in thy hold thy vassals near. Nay, never look upon your lord, and lay your hand upon your sword. I tell thee, thou'rt defied, and if thou saidest, I am not peer to any lord in Scotland here, lowland or highland, far or near, Lord Angus, thou hast lied. On the earl's cheek the flush of rage, o'ercame the ashen hue of age. Fierce he broke forth, and darest thou then to beard the lion in his den, the Douglas in his hall? And hopest thou hence unscathed to go? No, by Saint Bride of Bothwell, no. Up drawbridge, grooms, what warder ho? Let the portcullis fall. Lord Marmion turned, well was his need, and dashed the rowels in his steed. Like arrow through the archway sprung, the ponderous grate behind him rung. To pass there was such scanty room, the bars descending raised his plume. The steed along the drawbridge flies, just as it trembled on the rise. Not lighter does the swallow skim along the smooth lake's level brim. And when Lord Marmion reached his band, he halts and turns with clenched hand, and shouts of loud defiance pours, and shook his gauntlet at the towers. Horse, horse, the Douglas cried, and chase, but soon he reined his fury's pace. A royal messenger he came, though most unworthy of the name. A letter forged St. Jude to speed. Did ever knight so foul a deed? At first in heart it liked me ill, when the clerk praised his clerkly skill. Thanks to St. Bothan, son of mine, save Gawain ne'er could pen a line. So swore I, and I swear it still, Let my boy bishop fret his fill, saying, merry men my fiery mood. Old age ne'er cools the Douglas blood. I thought to slay him where he stood. 'Tis pity of him too, he cried. Bold can he speak, and fairly ride. I warrant him a warrior tried. And this his mandate he recalls, and slowly seeks his castle halls. The day in Marmion's journey wore, yet ere his passion's gust was o'er, they crossed the heights of Stanrig Moor. His troop more closely there he scanned, and missed the palmer from the band. Palmer or not, young Blount did say, he parted at the peep of day. Good sooth it was in strange array. In what array? Said Marmion quick. My lord, I ill can spell the trick. But all night long with clink and bang, close to my couch did hammers clang. At dawn the falling drawbridge rang, and from a loophole while I peep, old Bell the cat came from the keep, wrapped in a gown of sables fair, as fearful of the morning air. Beneath, when that was blown aside, a rusty shirt of mail I spied, by Archibald one in bloody work, against the Saracen and the Turk. Last night it hung not in the hall. I thought some marvel would befall, and next I saw them saddled lead old Cheviot forth, an earl's best steed, a matchless horse, though something old, prompt to his paces, cool and bold. I heard the sheriff Sholdo say, the earl did much the master pray to use him on the battle day, but he preferred, nay, Henry, cease, thou sworn horse courser, hold thy peace. Eustace, thou bearest a brain, I pray. What did Blount see at break of day? In brief, my lord, we both descried, for I then stood by Henry's side, the palmer mount and outwards ride upon the earl's own favourite steed. All sheathed was he in armour bright, and much resembled that same knight subdued by you in Cotswold's fight. Lord Angus wished him speed. The instant that Fitz-Eustace spoke, a sudden light on Marmion broke. Ah, dastard fool, to reason lost, he muttered. 'Twas nor fay nor ghost I met upon that moonlight wold, but living man of earthly mould. O dotage blind and gross! Had I but fought as wont one thrust, had laid De Wilton in the dust, my path no more to cross. How stand we now? He told his tale to Douglas, and with some avail 'twas therefore gloomed his rugged brow. Will Surrey dare to entertain 'gainst Marmion charge disprove in vain? Small risk of that, I trow, yet Clare's sharp questions must I shun, must separate Constance from the nun. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when first we practiced to deceive. A palmer too, no wonder why I felt rebuked beneath his eye. I must have known there was but one whose look could quell Lord Marmion. Stung with these thoughts, he urged to speed his troop, and reached at eve the Tweed, where Lennel's convent closed their march. There now is left but one frail arch. Yet did St. Bernard's abbot there give Marmion entertainment fair, and lodging for his train and Clare. Next morn the Baron climbed the tower to view afar the Scottish power, encamped on Flodden edge. The white pavilions made a show, like remnants of the winter snow, along the dusky ridge. Lord Marmion looked, at length his eye unusual movement might descry amid the shifting lines. The Scottish host drawn out appears, For flashing on the hedge of spears, the eastern sunbeam shines. Their front now deepening, now extending, their flank inclining, wheeling, bending, now drawing back and now descending. The skilful Marmion well could know they watched the motions of some foe who traversed upon the plain below. Even so it was, from Flodden Ridge the Scots beheld the English host leave Barmore Wood their evening post, and heedful watched them as they crossed the Till by Twisel Bridge. High sighted is and haughty while they dive into the deep defile. Beneath the cavern cliff they fall, beneath the castle's airy wall. By rock, by oak, by hawthorn tree, troop after troop are disappearing. Troop after troop, their banners rearing. Upon the eastern bank you see, still pouring down the rocky den where flows the sullen Till. And rising from the dim wood glen, standards on standards, men on men, in slow succession still, and sweeping o'er the Gothic arch, and pressing on its ceaseless march, to gain the opposing hill, that morn to many a trumpet clang, Twisel, thy rocks deep echo rang, and many a chief of birth and rank, St. Helen, at thy fountain drank. Thy hawthorn glade, which now we see in springtide bloom so lavishly, had then from many an axe its doom to give them marching columns room. And why stands Scotland idly now, dark Flodden on thy airy brow, since England gains the pass the while, and struggles through the deep defile? What checks the fiery soul of James? Why sits that champion of the dames, inactive on his steed, and sees between him and his land, between him and Tweed's southern strand, his host Lord Surrey lead? What vails the vain knight-errant's brand? O Douglas, for thy leading wand, fierce Randolph for thy speed. O for 1 hour of Wallace White, or well-skilled Bruce to rule the fight, and cry, St. Andrew and our right. Another sight had seen that morn, from fate's dark book a leaf been torn, and Flodden had been Bannock born. The precious hour has passed in vain, and English host had gained the plain, wheeling their march and circling still around the base of Flodden Hill. With kindling brow Lord Marmion said, This instant be our band arrayed. The river must be quickly crossed, that we may join Lord Surrey's host. If fight King James, as well I trust, that fight we will and fight we must. The Lady Clare behind our lines shall tarry while the battle joins. Himself he swift on horseback threw, down to the Tweed his banner he drew. Stoutly they braved the current's course, and though far downward driven perforce, the southern bank they gained. Behind them straggling came the shore, as best they might the train. A moment then Lord Marmion stayed, and breathed his steed, his men arrayed, then forward moved his band. Until Lord Surrey's rear guard won, he halted by a cross of stone, that on a hillock standing lone did all the field command. The hillock gained, Lord Marmion stayed. Here by this cross, he gently said, You well may view the scene. Here shalt thou tarry, lovely Clare. O think of Marmion in thy prayer. Thou wilt not well, no less my care, shall watchful for thy weal prepare. Young you, Blount and Eustace, are her guard, with 10 picked archers of my train, with England, if the day go hard, to Berwick speed amain, and if we conquer, cruel maid, my spoils shall at your feet be laid, when here we meet again. He waited not for answer there, and would not mark the mate's despair, nor heed the discontented look from either squire, but spurred amain, and dashed through the battle plain, his way to Surrey took. The good Lord Marmion, by my life, welcome to danger's hour. Short greeting serves in time of strife. Thus have I ranged my power. Myself will rule this central host. Stout Stanley fronts their right. My sons command the vaward post, with Brian Tunstall stainless knight. Lord Dacre, with his horsemen light, shall be in rearward of the fight, and succor those that need it most. Now gallant Marmion, well I know, would gladly to the vanguard go. Edmund the Admiral, Tunstall there, with thee their charge will blithely share. There fight thine own retainers too, beneath De Burgh, thy stalwart true. Thanks, noble Surrey, Marmion said, no further greeting there be paid, but parting like a thunderbolt, first in the vanguard made a halt, where such a shout there rose of Marmion, Marmion, that he cry, of Flodden mountain shrilling high, startled the Scottish foes. That was Canto 6. I'm reading it in 2 parts. I'm Jonathan Ingwall. Thank you for listening.